Hey, this is Cause back with you. So, another stuff I have from 1991 video here. So, these are full length CD albums that I have from 1991. And so I found 10. So, I have a collection of probably about 450 or so CDs. So I still have physical CDs. So these are ones that I dug out. These are all ones that are released in 1991. And so I thought I'd go through these, did a little bit of research on these. I don't think I actually bought all of these in 1991. But anyway, so let's kind of go through these and see what we've got here. So first one here is Spellbound by Paula Abdul. So this was her second full-length album. She had a remix album in between her first album, Forever Girl, and this one. So she only ever released three studio albums. She had one after this one, and then she had some compilations and other things, but she never actually had any more than three studio albums. Believe it or not, this one was number one on the Billboard 200 album charts for a couple of weeks. I just had 5 singles out of it. So you can see, some of these like Rush Rush, Promise of a New Day. There's quite a few singles off of this one. This album did pretty well. I like this album. This one was a pretty good album. But I don't know. For some reason, I mean, she's still on TV and fairly popular, but compared to some other artists at the time, guess her popularity didn't last too long after this. But anyways, she's still around. You see her in those arthritis cream commercials and stuff. Anyway, so she's still around, but second album did fairly well. That second album here I've got is Michael Bolton, Time on Tennis. This is also number one album in 1991. This is number one for 1 week. This was co-produced by let me see if I can get his name pronounced right. Walter Afanasiev. So you'll hear his name later in the next album I have. So half the songs on this album were either written or co-written by Diane Warren. So especially like later in the 90s, she co-wrote a lot of stuff with like Celine Dion, bunch of stuff throughout the 90s. But before this album, there weren't a whole lot. I mean, she written and co-wrote, stuff here and there. But like this was probably like the start of her, huge songwriting career, which is, going on to this day. I think there's an album coming out sometime, I think fairly soon, sometime this spring of 2021, which is like all stuff that Diane Warren wrote that she's gotten like she's gonna get other various artists to perform and come out with. Like the first single, I think is being performed with Darius Rucker. I think that's already been out released. But I think this was the first album where like half the songs are written or co-written by Diane Warren. So I think this one really is like, to me, is kind of more like a second half to Michael Bolton's previous album, kind of more than kind of a album that stands out on its own, really. So second one. Third one, Mariah Carey's Emotions. So this is her second album. So she had her self-titled debut, which was like huge. So I'd always assumed that this one was almost as big as that debut album, but I was doing research on it. This actually only ever made it to number 4 on the album charts. That first album was number 1 for 11 weeks. This never made it to number 1. So I was actually surprised by that. My personal favorite album of Mariah's was Music Box, which came out 2 years later, 1993. That one was number 1 on and off for 8 weeks. And that one's my personal favorite. Debut, I think, is my second favorite, and this is probably my pretty close third. So I was actually surprised that this one didn't do as well, both in the charts and then also in terms of sales, as the first one. And I mean, Music Box obviously was huge. That's probably one of the best-selling albums like in the history of obviously in the 90s. I think pop music in general. This one's got some great singles on it as well. So I was actually really surprised, and obviously, Mariah is obviously as popular as ever, even to this day. But yeah, I was really surprised just doing a little research on this one, that this one wasn't as popular as I always assumed it was. So that's that. Motions. Next one. So these are all in alphabetical order, by the way. Enya, Shepherd Moons. So this is actually the only one out of these 10 that has won a Grammy. So this one didn't get Grammy until 1993, but of these, only one that actually has a Grammy for best. I don't know what category, but it did win a Grammy Award. The big single come out of this one is Caribbean Blue. So this follow-up album to the previous album that had probably arguably her biggest single, which was Ornicle Flow. And out of that category, whatever you want to call it, new age, or whatever you want to call it, Enya's huge throughout the 90s. But this is a good album. I really like this one. I think as an album, I like it better than the previous one. I think commercially that one did a little bit better. So that's that one. Next one, Genesis We Can't Dance. So I think Genesis fans kind of fall into several categories. There's the very early, Genesis is Peter Gabriel, no Peter Gabriel, no Genesis. And then there's the early Phil Collins, kind of pre Abacab people, and then there's the pop Genesis, Invisible Touch era. I kind of fall into that category. I think Invisible Touch is a great album. This is pretty good. I still think Invisible Touch is best one out of this era. Mike Rutherford, Tony Banks, Phil Collins. And obviously, during this era, Phil Collins had his big solo career. Mike Rutherford, Mike and Mechanics, also had his big solo career. And this is the 14th, second to final studio album from Genesis. I think they had one more album later in the 90s. And they've reunited a couple of times since then, but like no big album releases. They've had a couple of live albums and stuff like that. So that's kind of that with this album. Next one, Immigrant Heart in Motion. So obviously, Immigrant's big, been a big Christian artist before this one. And this is arguably her, only kind of crossover pop album. Had, bunch of singles, 7 singles in total. Of those, 2 were like Christian singles, and then the other 5 were mainstream pop singles. I think her first kind of big exposure outside Christian genre was she did a duet with Peter Cetera, Next Time I Fall, back in, I think that was 1985. I think the album prior to this one, she released a couple of other singles to mainstream pop radio that didn't really do that well, but this one obviously, I think all 5 of the pop singles I think charted and did fairly well. You can see them here. I'll Remember You, obviously. Baby Baby was the huge one, and I believe even to this day this is still the biggest selling Christian album ever in the US. You also see so little font trick you see the title, Heart in Motion. Some of the letters are sideways, so you'll see in contrast with the next album I'll pull out, which is completely in contrast with this one, but that one also has some font tricks. So it's that one. Next one here. So you see complete contrast with the Christian album. This is NWA's Niggas for Life. So this is pretty notorious. And kind of that height of the gangster rap era. So this was NWA's kind of second and last studio album. They did have an EP in between their first studio album and this one. So by this point, Ice Cube had left and he had started his solo recording career. And also, this was also the same year that he was in Boys in the Hood. So that was also 1991. So this one, if you see, so the title, right? So font tricks again. Title of the album is written backwards. Letters are also backwards. Believe it or not, this album was also #1 on the album charts for a week. This actually unseated Paul Abdul's Spellbound on that album chart. So yeah, so interesting ties to some of the previous albums on my pile of stuff here. Next one, not an album per se, so this is a compilation, Pet Shop Boys discography. So it's a compilation of the previous singles that they'd released up until then, plus the last 2 tracks. They were released in the UK as singles, which is a bit unusual for compilation. So just recently, so if you've been watching television this year, 2021, Opportunities plays as the music in the Allstate TV commercial, where it's like there's a disguised Force series, like a hood ornament, and the guy's like driving through a desert. So because of that commercial that first ran during the Super Bowl, that song has recharted both, I believe, in the UK and the US on like some streaming charts, and I think the dance charts. And West End Girls, I believe, in the both also again in the US and the UK, have also recharted, I believe, last month in February on streaming and dance charts. And in the UK, there's a TV show that recently started airing called It's a Sin. The title is taken from It's a Sin, which is in this compilation. And the title and the theme song to that show, which is covered by covered by a different band, which is the same It's a Sin. So it's covered from the It's a Sin by Pet Shop Boys. So the first CD I ever bought when I went from cassette to CDs was Pet Shop Boys album, not this one. And I actually just like a week and a half ago bought their most recent studio album, which came out at the beginning of 2020. So I've been a Pet Shop Boys fan for a long time. So that's that. Next one, Joyride by Roxette. So Look Sharp was the previous album that did fairly well internationally. It Must Have Been Love, which was a non-album single, which was like the closing song on Pretty Woman, which came in between Look Sharp and this, which probably helped make them much more popular here in the US. So this was a huge seller internationally. I really like this album, not just the singles, but all the other tracks on this album. I really like. Unfortunately, Marie Fredriksson, the vocalist, passed away, I believe, of a brain tumor the very end of 2019. I'm thinking of going back and finding a lot of their albums that they've released. I have one album, the album that they released after this one, but not some of their stuff since then. So I've been thinking about going back and finding and buying a lot of the releases afterwards. So that's this one. And last but not least, so this is U2's Octung Baby. So this is also number one, 1991. So this is the follow-up to Rattle and Hum, which was both an album and like a rockumentary. So I don't have that one. I wasn't a huge fan of that album. It was kind of weird. It was like half covers, like half a live album. And like Joshua Tree was such a great album. And like Rattle and Hum was like kind of a disappointment in comparison. And this album, I mean, I still don't think it's nearly as good as Joshua Tree. But like, compared to Rattle and Hum, like as an album, I think this is so much better. But like as like a concept and as an album, I always thought this was really, really good. And then I think they gained, I think, a lot of new like younger fans. I know a lot of people that are younger than me who like really became huge U2 fans after this, and then like the whole like zoo tour thing that went on after the release of this album. And I know they gained a lot of new fans after this. So U2 still obviously is popular as ever. So I think this album did a lot of good things for them, especially after kind of Rattle and Hum I think was a commercial success, but I don't know how that did, how well that did for them, kind of with their fan base I know a lot of people, that were fans of theirs earlier before Rattle and Hum, kind of, a little confused with the direction they were going with the whole Rattle and Hum, this, the CD and the film. So I think this kind of helped with this album helped with that. So anyhow, so those were the 10 CDs I happen to have from 1991. Probably have one or two more crap I have from 1991 things in me. So stay tuned, and I'll be back in a week or two with another one.